So I'd like to welcome Thaminda Ramanayake, who is CEO of Anaveon AG, to this BioLeaders interview. We're fortunate enough to be reaching almost our 100th BioLeader interview, so it's fantastic to have Thaminda join us today. Thaminda is currently the CEO of Anaveon AG and brings over 20 years of global pharmaceutical leadership experience with a strong track record in business development, strategic transactions, and advancing innovative therapeutics. Recently, the CBO at CureVac, where he played a key role and a critical role in the company's transformation and its acquisition by BioNTech in 2025. So it's a privilege to have Thaminda here today. Welcome, Thaminda. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Stuart, for inviting me. I didn't realize this was the 100th mark, which is great. Which is a jubilee, I suppose.
Well, it's great to have you, and a pleasure to get to know you over recent months. And this BioLeaders interview is really to learn from you and your experiences to date, hear more about your view on the world and the executive landscape for leadership in the biotech and life sciences industry. So without further ado, we'll jump into some questioning if that's good for you.
Makes sense. Let's do it.
Super. Well, maybe you can kindly start us off with key milestones in your career journey to date, Thaminda.
Right. If I look back at my journey, how I started, I think one of the key milestones that has not changed consistently throughout my entire journey is the perception I have about patient care and the care I have about patient outcomes. Very, very early on in my life, I wanted to become a physician scientist, and I traveled this path, getting myself educated in science, getting myself exposed to the healthcare system. One of the key milestones I realized during that exercise is the gap in between the translational science and actual patient care. And I asked myself the question, how do I change it? And this is when I decided maybe it makes sense to play a role to bridge science and patient care. And fortunately, I found myself in the space I'm in today. So that's one of the biggest milestones in my life.
And that clearly is a value driver that has been part of your career journey to date. Tell me more about your transition through pharma through pharma and learning, cutting your teeth, learning your trade, and into the biotech landscape as such.
Yeah, and that's an important question and an important educational moment to the industry, I would think, because the pharma industry and the biotech provides you an opportunity that in generally life doesn't provide you, which is it tells you what success is, and then it tells you, now go and be successful. Generally, it's the other way around. You say, go and be successful, and success is celebrated. You go to church and say, like, oh, I want to go to heaven. You don't have anybody who's gone there come back and say, like, oh, yeah, there's hot coffee in the lobby, right? So I think it's really important for folks who are looking at biotech to have some exposure or some awareness and some training, very importantly, in the pharma business, where when you sit in the biotech chair, you see what success looks like in pharma's eyes. So I think I was very privileged very early on to get exposed to this, partly because brand name large companies have always been sort of, quote unquote, the go-to place in my career. And then when you go there, you realize, this is how you do stuff. And then I move on to another when I feel comfortable that I've learned enough. And then I realize, wow, these guys do it very differently, but achieve at a different point. So, but the diversity of the experience, the machinery, and what pharma cares to make something happen, the complexity of it. We have no appreciation if you just start your career right out the gate at biotech.
Mm.
So it's really important to understand this phenomenon. It's an ecosystem where biotechs coexist with pharma, where biotechs have generally a very meaningful contribution to pharma, and then this needs to be very well understood, whether either you're in the pharma corner or the biotech corner. Generally, we assume pharma do have this appreciation for biotechs. If they don't, they over time develop this. But biotechs generally don't have the appreciation for pharma. And this is where the problem lies. Because mostly they just don't understand the complexity of the industry and the complexity of large pharma organizations to have an appreciation for what they're bringing to the table and how it should be presented.
Very good. Very good. On the topic of biotech and you residing as the newly appointed CEO of Anaveon AG, tell me something about your company that you would like to share with the BioLeaders audience, and also, what is your long-term vision for the company?
Yeah, so let's start with my long-term vision. My long-term vision is to see whether I could be a part of what I believe a legacy creation. I did spend a lot of time in science. I did spend a lot of time in finance. In both of these aspects, I'm just wondering, where's my mark? Clearly, I'm not running for the Nobel Prize or not, but I believe if you pick the right asset, if you pick the right company and build the right company, you could leave as a legacy.
Mm.
And I believe with Anaveon, I might have stumbled upon that. And I continue to believe it, and I continue to say it. Why? Because in immunology, if you start to modulate T cell compartment, it's similar to going after the king. First of all, you better not miss. Second, it's hard to convince, right? Most people have tried cytokines, chemokines, blockage of various things, managing B cells, but that's the closest that you've come to really understanding who makes the rules in the immune system. I think Anaveon T cell depleter is probably one of the best in class I've seen. So I'm very hopeful that the data would translate into the clinic. And if it does indeed translate, this will be for the first time you would be introducing a very potent, broad T-cell depletion molecule into the ecosystem. There is one ahead of us, right? Some people have tried to go ahead of that molecule as well. But the data is not as good as our molecule at this moment. So we are very hopeful this will be probably the best in class, which is also a very fortunate place to be for Anaveon with the PD-1 T-cell depleter. And we also think that we could perhaps be, if you're smart about it, first in a disease area to showcase the potency of the PD-1 depleter. With both of these combined, I think we have an opportunity to make a mark for the company.
Very good. Very good. Well, the future is hopefully very bright for Anaveon and under your leadership, Thaminda. Tell me, who during the course of your career has had the greatest influence over your professional career to date? If you can, I appreciate maybe naming one is is always sometimes a challenge, and we don't want to publicly rank. But at the same time,
Yeah.
Who has stood out in your
You
career?
know, yeah. So let's see. So what is my career, right? So if you start that way, I like to believe I'm in the business of people, whether it be relationship building or caring for the well-being of patients, right? It's all about people, to be fair, humankind. I think the first principles of that was granted to me by my mother,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have to acknowledge her on this one. She was very big into creating relationship, maintaining them, hosting, showing what quote unquote love is, the very forceful way of showing it. And I practiced it. I copied her behavior quite a bit, and I practiced it, to date, to be fair. Bringing people together, hosting dinners, connecting people with no agenda on my end, but just seeing the ecosystem grow. And it bears a lot of fruit, right? And when I get into a deal environment, then I think about this tool or the trait as a way to propel the deal as well. First, to try to build a relationship with the parties. Second, I try together with the parties build a relationship with the deal, and then all of a sudden we all have a vested interest in what we wanted to achieve. And it's a very artful way of looking at deal making versus you get a very mechanical way of deal making, And then when you start to think about building companies, right, then also this principle comes to light. And how does this come to light? Well, you need to start from a level of impact, right? And that impact is this long vision that you set for the company and the target disease area. And then second, you need to think about an impact internal, why people are in this company, what is their purpose, right? How it is going to be impactful in their life. And then last, how do I be the agent of that impact, right? To propel, the wind in the sails kind of a scenario. Long time ago, David Pierquat, if I name somebody in the business, he's the head of Amgen BD.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, he had a very flourishing career, came through Schering-Plough, Johnson & Johnson, told me, you need to come to the industry when I was a consultant and a banker, right? You need to come to the industry. I never believed him, right? Never believed him. It's like, finally said, why don't you come and stay one day at Amgen, just see how things are done, right? And he said, so I had time one day and I just said, oh yeah, Dave, I'm going to visit you. And he bought me a $2 cup of coffee from the Amgen cafeteria. He said, just walk with me, see what the Amgen is about. Come and see. Here's what you don't see in corporate development, how we think about strategy and etc. And to date, I think that's the best $2 investment he's made. Right?
Well, I would agree. The return on investment there is a solid one.
100%. And then last, I would also mention, when you think about the company building, you cannot forget Frederick Frank from Lehman Brothers, right? So Dave introduced me to Fred some time ago, and unfortunately he passed in 2021 of natural age, right? Fred has this philosophy about building biotech companies because he's sort of the quote-unquote the godfather of biotechnology, right? So put Roche and Genentech together and, continue to think about this ecosystem the way I'm thinking about it. And he said, if you want to build a successful biotech company, you're building a just-in-time company. That's because you've identified a gap in the ecosystem and you're building this company to fill that gap. Now, if you're successful in building a just-in-time company, or a JITCO as he calls it, you have the ability to partner. At that juncture, you build something called the RITCO, Royalty Income Trust Company, RIT, RITCO. Why is this important from transitioning from a JITCO to a RITCO? That RITCO is a financeable company because it's got an instrument in hand now after partnering that could be financed. That finance could be potentially put back into the company to grow, right? So if you've moved from your JITCO, just-in-time company, successfully to RITCO, royalty income trust company, at that moment you have the ability to build a fully integrated biotech company, a FIBCO. Now, if you don't follow this Fred Frank recipe, he said that you're building a shitco. This is not my words, right? But this is it. And you can Google and find out. That principle has played out for the past 40 years consistently, right? Consistently. This is the only way biotech should be built. Not investing in entitled science, not because, oh, I have a degree or I have a PhD or a Nobel Prize or whatever. It's like, I think I could make a change in a way to fill a market need. You don't want to be the first one to create a market, right? Right? But you also don't want to the first one to create a problem either, right? So
very, very poignant recipe for success in biotech, courtesy of Fred Frank. Thank you, Thaminda. And kind of moving on to kind of leadership, and it's multifaceted, of course, and I'd like to explore this a little bit further. But you describe, you've already talked about the importance of relationships to the core of your values and success. Tell me a little bit more about your approach to motivating and leading high-performing and multi-generational teams that we're encountering today.
Yeah, I mean, this is a near and dear thing to my heart. I mean, I've spent the past 10 plus years training myself how to become a better leader. The leadership is self-discovery. If somebody comes to me saying, oh, I'm ready for my next stage in my career, what I want is now to manage people, well, that statement tells you that that person is not ready. So when I think about building teams, I would like to build teams of high caliber, high ownership, and high loyalty. And at Sanofi, I've gone to the extent, it was a very large team. I needed to manage it in such a way that they have the loyalty sense as well, especially in the Cambridge, Massachusetts area. And they are doing it because they like the leadership and they like the work they're doing. So one of the conversations that I have at year end is, go get a job from outside, come with a job offer, and then we sit down and talk about it. Whether you get it or not, it's a different story. If you do get it, then I have a challenge in my hand to take it to HR and see, like, look, this guy can leave. What are we going to do? Can we keep him or not? Or her, right? If we can't, then they have a choice. Do you want to stay or not? Right? If they don't get the job, then I have a problem in my hand as well. That means you now train under me, but you didn't get the job. It's a bad look on me, right? Then that's a reflection of what can I do for you to be marketable for the next year. Then we quickly calibrate and figure out the places that he or she needs attention. So in my goal setting, historically, I usually follow, of course, the corporate rules, but I tweak a little bit and put about 40% on personnel development. What do you want to achieve by sitting in this job? What do you want to see for the company get done? And then where do you want it to go in the next 3 to 5 years? If somebody says, I'm totally fine in this job, I'm going to die here in this company, that's the one phenotype, right? Then there's other folks, well, I want to be a VP, I want to be a CEO, I want to be this, that, the other. Have to have the proper training installed. And I take that very seriously because my brand is attached to it. So I don't want to have any association of somebody else being hired and say like, oh my God, this person cannot do the job. I'll tell you, there are a lot of BD people in the industry. Unfortunately, there are a lot. This not just the BD, there are great interviewers, but then they come and they just can't perform. And there are folks I know, actually, I have unfortunately had to let go or couldn't recommend in senior BD roles, sometimes not a single deal that's meaningful. I always cringe when I see like deal undisclosed, confidential, this, that, the other, and you start to plug through it. Just like you can't say much about it because, well, you don't know anything about it. You know? So I've become quite good at like going through resumes and asking pointed questions. And I like to believe the teams I build are a continuum of talent versus just in time talent.
It's always, I think, in a leadership role, one has to think of those that have been in your team. How do they reflect on you? And I think looking at it as a reflection of yourself, whether they go on to work within the company under other leadership, or they get promoted, or leave the organization. That is a legacy. It's a touch point with a leader.
That's true.
And that is a legacy that will organically, exist, out in the market. And I think there's an element of treating individuals to ensure that, you, if they choose to move on, that you've given them the best platform, that they can indeed leverage themselves, and so that legacy, you see, those individuals that you've led over the years performing out in the marketplace. That's always very satisfying.
It's very satisfying. It's very satisfying. There are folks who continue to keep one-on-ones with me, about folks that have actually worked for me about 10 years ago, right? So, and this even more recently, there's folks that I have trained and I've selected, who I brought into the next organization, either as consultants or just to show an example, right? Sometimes, you take a diamond and then polish it, and then you go to the next one and say, like, look, you could be that. And then, you can showcase. So I've built a little bit of this, little bit of a repertoire. The team I put together at CureVac, it's an interesting one because I saw the need, but people saw the team. So I built the team to fit the need, versus everybody else wanted to build a team, because these are two different things, right? So it's like if you're looking at a Jack Black movie, sometimes when you look at that cast of characters, you feel like, oh, these are a bunch of jokers, right? But together, they perform a task that nobody else could, right? So, I mean, we have a live example right now. It's a $2.23 billion deal. It's technically 3 deals, right? CureVac acquisition, settlement, royalty sale, all in one setting, in one big block, got done because the right transaction team, 5 people, that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's it. That's the entire team. Right?
Remarkable impact. And brings me nicely on to just picking your brains about, the attributes, if you could package into 3, but if we end up with more, no problem. But, what would you say are the key attributes for making an outstanding leader and relevant leader in today's world?
I think one of the key attributes is you have to have a commitment. When I say commitment, a commitment to the vision, meaning like you need to have conviction around this. Commitment to yourself that you're going to deliver for the company, right? And then you have to make a commitment to your word that you actually have given to your boards, your teams, etc. You need to have a commitment. It's a high level of commitment. And once you set that level of commitment, the organization, you don't even need to communicate. People are going to feel it. People are going to feel it. Right? They know that you're here, you're doing stuff. Your contract is not signed, or your thing is not done. It's happening, right? these guys drilling through already gone, right? So people feel it. This is the thing. And the other one is you have to have a deep level of compassion, right? Deep level of compassion, right? So it's not necessarily empathy. It's compassion. You have to be compassionate towards yourself, for sure, right? But you have to think about the organization. Company is a person for tax purposes, to be fair. It will have a personality. It is the personality that you install with your people, right? So I always say we have, let's call it 15 people, and we technically have 16, right? There's a 15 plus 1, which is the company, right? So we have to be very cognizant of how these personalities are, and you have to be very empathetic and compassionate. Right? And the last thing is it has to be goal-oriented movement. It has to be, right? There's this saying, a goal, unstructured goal is always a dream. You just can't. So time is a resource. It's not a platform for a company, right? And events need to have a targeted, value-driven, time-driven approach, right? And it's extremely regimented way of running a company, and it is what it is. And always you don't make, because you wanted to achieve these goals, your good is good enough, right? You don't make perfect the enemy of the good, right? And because your biggest challenge is time. It's not money, right? It's time. So if you wanted to build a company that's going to outlast you, you have to make sure time is one of your employees.
And I suppose with those attributes in mind, do you see the role of biotech executives, evolving, and I suppose it comes also with the industry evolving, and perhaps even the political landscape evolving beyond that. How do you see the role of biotech executives evolving then in the next decade, Thaminda?
Yeah, I think the biotech executives and the pharma executives, the evolution will bring them closer and closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
The pharma executives are in one extreme end right now, today, right? The biotech executives tend to be in another extreme today. And, I call it the suffering corners, right? They're in this one or the other corner suffering by themselves. Right? We live in a system which is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller because of AI and policies and the interactions desired by humans becoming at home, right? At home, in the sense it's not just physically at home, but closer and closer together, right? In such a scenario, if a biotech executive does not know the impact of, let's call it tariffs, on your future drug that is going to be outliving your company, we have a problem, right? If a biotech executive does not know how to communicate value, I'm not talking about value in the billions of dollars. I'm talking about the value from a value and access perspective. How is this going to have a patient impact? What are you changing in the day-to-day life of a patient by what you're cooking in an Eppendorf tube, down in the lab? We have a problem. Pharma, on the other hand, have the other problem. They have no idea what does it take to get something like that Eppendorf tube funded, right? And they have no idea the life cycle of a company independent of a department that is well funded, right? They have no idea how hard it is to keep consistency in an SOP or a process in a revolving door in terms of a talent. When they start to talk to a biotech, you ask, oh, have you done this? Have you done this? Why didn't you run it this way? Why didn't you run it that way? Without really thinking, okay, They've gone through 50% of the way. It's our job to take it and run with it the other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on this side, you have, we've gone 100% of the way. Well, why can't the pharma people just pick it up and just run with it? So this intersection needs to be closer. This intersection needs to be closer. And it's a hard thing for the both parties to do this. On the pharma side, they're being challenged to be even farther, meaning they're now asked to be not pharma CEOs, they're asked to be politicians, right? It's even farther, right? And on the biotech side, you push the other way. Well, you need to do more research. You need to go to academia. You need to fund academic sciences, not like anything else, but you need to bring a fully integrated company to us if you want to do a deal. So we have to figure out a way to bring these two closer, get the conversations closer. The good thing is this next generation of leaders who are coming in are the folks like myself who grew up with like the John Reeds of the world, Dietmar Bergers of the world, right? David Rees, of course, he retired recently of the world. We know these people. So there's the possibility to bring these together. The bio board involvement, right? If you think about the United States, the FDA, the Marty McKays, or John Crowley's of the world, we know because we are of similar age, maybe plus or minus 10 or 5 years, not 10, 15 though, right? So I think we have this opportunity to do this, right? And it'll be a shame if you don't do it. And I'm very vested, as you know, I'm not just interested in biotech. I'm interested in biotech, pharma policy, drug policy, value creation. This entire ecosystem is of interest to me because for this to function, you need to have all of these pieces together.
Very good. You touched on AI very quickly, and of course, it's difficult, I think, to have a conversation these days without seeking to understand how it can be applied. It's not, whether it's applied. I think these days it's more how's it applied, given its prevalence and here to stay really on an ongoing basis. So, what do you believe, as of today, looking to the future? What impact do you believe AI can make, both across, research applications, potentially in operationally in your business, but also, across the broader industry over, the coming years?
Yeah, so I'm a big, big believer that technology will propel humankind into the next stratosphere, right? So I'm a venture partner sitting with Entree Bio, which is an offshoot of the Entree Capital, which is the largest tech fund, right? That's invested in quantum computing and the likes, right? And I can tell you, like, AI needs to be embraced as a companion, not as a tool, but as a companion, right? And that will potentially ease the resistance to use technology and think that technology will replace the humans, right? I don't know whether you could replace the humans, but they could coexist with humans. They could coexist with them. It could be a great thought partner, right? Great thought partner. Productivity. Like I could do twice the amount of work, maybe even more now than 10 years ago. I was expecting when I age, to slow down. It's the opposite that's happening. And then I asked myself, what's going on? And then I realized, wow, the days I take 2 days to schedule something can be done in less than 2 seconds, right? Because you can have an AI platform schedule it for you, right? The days I think about a clinical trial protocol, few months, I can do it in 4 hours over a flight, right? Right? And then, there was a situation where I drafted an IB and a clinical protocol in less than 4 hours because all the resources were right at my fingertips. Right?
Do
So
you think
it's a companionship. Yeah, go ahead.
so? I was going to say you just touched on doubling your productivity. Within 10 years, or over the last 10 years. Do you feel that will be multiple times more powerful
Yeah.
if you look back in the next, so in a decade's time from now?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that will have many more multiples of impact on productivity?
100%. My goal, maybe I've spoken to you this before too. I continue to say this because I firmly believe it. The last 25 years has been tremendously successful for me in terms of achieving the goals, because I try to every time make time my slave, quote unquote, right? I believe for the next 25 years, I could do work of 50 years at minimum. So my question is, can I do 25 years of work within the next 10 years? And the answer, I think, is yes. As a matter of fact, I know it's yes. So when I look back at my next 10 years, I believe I could achieve the same amount of productivity that I had for the past 25 years within the next 10 years.
Very good. Thaminda, just a quick time check. So we'll just break quickly from the questions. How much time do you have a very hard stop?
I could go maybe 15, 20 minutes more. I do have a hard stop actually at 11:30. Yeah.
We shouldn't need more than another 15 minutes, I would say. So
Super.
Just a courtesy. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that your diary wasn't.
No, thank you.
Be disrupted. Yeah. We have just got a handful more questions. Just switching back to those questions. We talked about AI, an unavoidable topic, and is an important one to embrace. What are, perhaps aside from that, what are some of the other perhaps key challenges affecting the biotech and life science industry more broadly in 26 and beyond?
I think one of the bigger challenges is, I guess if I would say a few challenges, one challenge that comes to my mind right away is the data sharing issue that we have in the industry, right? Most of this, when you think about AI, coming off of this AI topic, but it's tied to this one, most of this AI needs data sets, training sets, etc. And some of these things are not available publicly. These are perhaps maybe even proprietary, and there's no way to teach know-how to an AI, right? So there's a little bit of a lag in terms of how the industry could propel, because humans, when they move from company to company, they carry the know-how. They may not hopefully take any proprietary information, but they do know when they run an experiment or when you do a business presentation or whatever it is, you've seen it, right? Your training set is big. Unfortunately, AIs don't have that advantage today because all the training sets are protected. Publicly available sets tend to be the old ones, right? We are just looking back and looking at old data sets and realizing, wow, look at the amount of things we missed. Now think about giving the current data sets into these AI machines, right? And realizing the things that we missed, right? So this is the access and this democratization of data is a huge issue in the industry. The second one I see is policy, right? I say broadly policy because it applies both in the United States and in Europe. I spend a lot of time with policymakers in Europe, and little time in the US, but I have intentions to be involved a little bit more. Regulations and policy can hinder significantly acceleration of innovation. There are prohibitive policies, a lot of prohibitive policies in European Union that really slows down European Union. And they thought they were protecting their people without even realizing they're essentially killing their ecosystem, unfortunately, right? And when they know it's wrong, they still continue to do it. It's either a behavioral issue that they're trained, that they just can't change, or it's a political issue, right? So, this Inventor Remuneration Act, some of these taxations that's installed, right? Review timelines and clinical protocol absorptions, site activations, and etc. A lot of these things that, because democracy is the founding principle, you need to get buy-in from so many people, satisfy so many others, and etc. It has become super hard, right? And then because of the United States, now we are realizing, of course, we need to be competitive on it. We have these archaic policies when it comes to running clinical trials and the likes. The United States FDA, USDA from an agriculture perspective, right? So we have a lot of issues in this country. And people are now realizing that this is going to be an economic impact, negative economic policies for both of these continents, the European continent and the American continent. Ray Dalio recently published something around this waves of economic superiorities that are coming in. And one of the reasons why China is on the rise is they have this almost like one system that they can make a decision and immediately implement it. They've become the world's, manufacturing hub. And then all of a sudden, now they are about to take off, and we cannot avoid that. It is what it is. To change the rest of the ecosystem in the world will take time. So rather than trying to slow them down, how about we speed up and collaborate? Right? This has been my view. It is a threat otherwise, and it will be, biotechnology over the past probably 2 decades. China has used these policies to become a leader in the space, not necessarily to be a leader, but to use it as, it's almost a weaponization of it. APIs, right? Talent, knowledge, algorithms, right? Tools, IP, all of this, information included, right? China, you can get information into China, you cannot get out, right? So now it's becoming a little evident. But you know what? It's been going on for 20 years, right? So did we know it then? Yes. But we didn't have the foresight, right? How you do it it's very important going forward, the policy piece. And the last piece for the industry is so bad in communication, right? So bad, right? Nobody likes to communicate the value we bring into the industry, right? Nobody wants to communicate the impact we have in the industry. To be fair, the biotech pharma industry's sentiment, the public sentiment of this industry is one below the tobacco industry. The two industries do two different things in the human body, right? So why do we, we're terrible at communicating, and in the absence of communication, somebody takes the mic and start to say things that people believe, like the politicians, and we miss the opportunity. So we have to be better communicated to showcase, and also saying, if somebody is saying something wrong, we should correct it publicly versus going to a Senate subcommittee hearing and doing behind closed doors, right? So, these three, I think, are challenges that we need to fix.
Well, thank you. And maybe switching slightly, to on a more personal note, life as an international biotech and pharma executive is fast paced and typically time poor. Tell me, how do you switch off and strive for some form of balance between work and being a father and personal time?
Yeah, no, of course. I have to pay attention to that, and like I said, I'm trying to be very disciplined with time because of that, right? So when I fly, I use flight time. as the reset times to, manage time, time changes and jet lag and stuff like that. So it's very regimented times. I pick flights at a particular time so that my body has the optimal time to adjust, right? So I don't lose time in both ends of functional times. And then when I'm at home, I try to make sure that I carve out dedicated time for my, my child. It's important, he gets that right attention. And I also like to, do a little bit of rock climbing, get into the outdoors, and I try to get recharged that way. I go to places where there's no cell reception sometimes, right? So, and give, all the work we do is irreplaceable. I mean, I'm 100% replaceable. I'm irreplaceable for people who care, right? So you have to pay attention to that as well. Yeah.
I think that's a very,
Yeah.
very important thing to remember. Talking about things to remember, what was maybe some of the best advice you were given, some advice that you would give, and what you wish you'd known?
Yeah. One of the best advices I was given is take the win and run. I always try to, convince people on certain things. And if somebody says, yes, I haven't, I may not even hear it because I'm in the process of now convincing. So that take the win and run is not just taking the win and moving on. It's just pay attention, right? Listen, right? The hardest skill it's actually listening. Talking is easy. Listening is hard. And especially as a BD person, you need to listen to the things that are not said. And this is the hardest part. If you're a bad listener, that means you're not just not hearing the noise, but you're not hearing the unsaid. That's not cool. This is one of the very valuable advices I've gotten. It teaches you not to be too hard on yourself either, right? So, yeah. And one advice that I generally give people is, don't be afraid to fail, right? Because your mistakes should never define you. We make mistakes all the time, either willingly or unwillingly, we make it. But the good thing is you have to acknowledge the mistake, you embrace the punishment if need be, move on, right? If you're focused on the rearview mirror and you can see the barn in the rearview mirror, right? That means you haven't gone forward. In the next 5 minutes, you don't see the barn, you've moved on, right?
Very good.
So, yeah. And if there's a book recommendation, I would say The 4 Agreements.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
And in terms of, and then in just closing, what advice today would you give your 23-year-old self if you had the opportunity?
Oh, wow. I would say, if I have the opportunity, I would say slow down, think, and do what's necessary, not what the society is expecting you to do. The agency, building the agency is very important early on in life. And most people don't build their agency, capability of making rational decisions by themselves until some people never make it, right? So this is one of my tasks, to get to my son, trying to teach him to make decisions, take accountability, responsibility very early on. Yeah.
Respond, don't react.
Yeah.
Very good.
Exactly.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thaminda, that was all fantastic to hear, and we could probably talk for many, many hours on all of the topics. But I'm very grateful for your time today, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. And we look forward to seeing the success of Anaveon in the coming months and years.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the good wishes. Of course, you're going to see it. We'll make it happen.
Very good.
All right. Thank you, Stuart.